My name is Dr. Nick Jensen. Some of you might have seen me already. You're probably wondering where I am and why I'm speaking to you from here. Well, I live in New Zealand now. I was born in Paris, and New Zealanders typically introduce themselves with their river, their mountain, and their tribe. So I'm here with my original tribe in Paris, and this is my river, the Seine. Behind me you can see Notre Dame. And I've come to talk to you today from Paris about our research, the research program that I direct for Now and Next. And I want to tell you a few things and share with you why I'm so excited about it and what we're going to learn together. So behind me is the Sorbonne, which is my university, the university I went to first. And behind here are the cafes. I used to spend countless hours doing my homework with my fellow students. And Sorbonne is actually a great place for me to talk to you about research, because what we did was involving going back to first principles. And first principles meant what would be the best thing for parents, as opposed to thinking what would the starting point be for professionals. And I am one of those. I'm a researcher and a clinical psychologist, but being a parent and having the lived experience of bringing up a child, an adult, very successful artist with a disability, and being part of this journey meant that the theories that the universities and the academics have to offer include today way more than what they traditionally included when this field was started, which was purely the medical model, which views the professional as the expert and the parent perhaps as the person in need who needs to be given advice, told what to do, and that doesn't apply anymore. Today we have parents who want to be an active part in the future of their child and their family, and this is the journey I'm going to take you on today. Silvana and I were both mothers of now adults who have a disability, and we felt that we wanted to accelerate the learning period for parents. When we looked at the models that were available to us to help to teach parents about their journey, really the traditional model is the medical model, which has its roots in the model that sees parents as in grief. And the problem we found with this model is that the cycle that it describes goes all the way to grief, anger, denial, etc., and it finishes with acceptance. And acceptance was simply not good enough for us, because we felt that we wanted our children to achieve and to look forward to a great future for ourselves and our families and our children. And so, as one of the Now and Next parents said, it's all too easy to give away our control to professionals if we go through the model that of experts versus clients or customers or patients, as the medical model has it. Then it is all too easy to give away our control and to think that the professionals have the answers. Well, the professionals have some answers and they have great knowledge, but the best way for us to go forward is to partner with them, is to find what is the place where we can both recognize our expertise and both contribute, so that we get to our common aim, which is the success for our children. And so rather than the grief model, we looked at other models, and the model that the positive psychology reinforces and builds is the model of post-traumatic growth. This model says, well, you might go through difficult periods in time in your life, but there is a way to come out of these periods with more resilience, with a stronger way forward. And this is how we wanted to go forward with positive psychology and post-traumatic growth. Well, these are kind of words that are jargon of psychologists, but they translate into the research that we did on empowerment and the psychology of hope and the psychology of engagement. And we feel that when parents engage positively in that journey, then the potentially to get best results for everyone is the best. And when we looked at the theories that early intervention developed through the years, we find a continuum between looking at parents as people that can be consulted or that can be genuinely accepted as partners, all the way to the models developed by Carl Dunst that includes the building a true partnership with parents through helping families become more participatory. So the models that the professionals are used to going by are the models that talk about the relational side of making a connection with parents. If I'm talking now to you professionals, I understand that when you studied to be a speech therapist, occupational therapist, a psychologist, a social worker, counselor, all these professions that may help a family who has a child with a disability, then a lot of emphasis was put on establishing a rapport with families. And when I talk to professionals about how they establish rapport, they tell me that sometimes it can take 2, 3, 4 sessions, sometimes more, and that's because they feel, if coming from the grief model, that it's going to take quite a long time to build a trust of the family until we can approach a topic that is so potentially challenging to them. With Now and Next and with the positive psychology, we take a different way. We developed a tool that is participatory, that helps parents quickly engage with the topic that most matters to them, is how do I create progress for my child? And so yes, they are really interested in participation, and the training for Pictability reinforces just that. Pictability is a tool that was built from the ground up to foster participation, engagement of parents. And so we feel that with that approach, we don't need to spend all these sessions building rapport. We will instead invest that time in helping parents understand that they when they choose the long-term goals through the images, the next most important task is to actually translate those long-term goals into short-term goals. That's where we want to put our energy. That's where we feel is the most return for the parents and for the professionals. We have found through our results that professionals were also really empowered by Pictability training, and that was quite a surprise to us, because we could have understood that Pictability as a tool empowers parents, but now professionals who have done the training, we're getting close to 100 now around the world in 4 countries, in Finland, in Canada, in New Zealand and Australia. These professionals say that they're empowered because they finally have a tool that is a positive way to go forward with the parents, to engage them rapidly and to get into the core of the issue, which is how do we create progress for the children. So we turned to the field of positive psychology and borrowed some of their main concepts, such as prospection, flow, and flourishing. The positive psychology was formally launched, I think, by Martin Seligman in the year 2000, when he became the head of the American Psychology Association, because he was quite disappointed at the fact that psychology had taken an important role in defining pathology, which is in itself a very important quest. We need to find out how to relieve suffering from people suffering from mental illness or from the different emotional challenges, and that's important. So he talks about going from -5 or -3 to maybe 0, but then he realized that as a psychologist, when he did help his clients get rid of the anxiety or the presenting issue that they came with, they still weren't necessarily happy. They were more empty of anxiety. And so he decided that more effort needed to be put into understanding what psychology could teach us about how human beings are engaging in the progress, in innovation, in accomplishing great strides for humanity. And that's from 0 up, 0 plus 5, and Martin Seligman decided then that he was going to support positive psychology to grow as a science, to be evidence-based. And today there is a massive amount of evidence, some of it in the neuropsychology, some of it has been qualitatively described, quantitatively described, that support the fact that we're not talking about a smiley face and don't worry, be happy. This is just part of how it was popularized, but that's actually not what positive psychology is. Positive psychology is the science of flourishing. The next two concepts that we borrowed from psychology is the concepts of projective identification and gamification. So quickly, we thought that it would be really cool for Pictability, for the situation that people plan their future for their child, should be a fun activity, a game. Why not? At the moment, what happens when people need to find goals for their children is a conversation between a practitioner and parents. And we're not built for having conversations about uncertainty in the future. In fact, data has shown that this is quite stressful for parents, and this is why we bring the concept of flow. Is that when we reduce the stress in the situation and we look at a concept of bringing those concepts together, of planning with the children, then we increase flow and decrease stress, and that is a better way to plan. The other concept and last that I want to introduce is that of projective identification. So when participants choose cards and they choose the yes and no pile, what happens is that they look at these images and they think that the images connect them to a reality that is very, very personal inside themselves, where they an image that might mean one, A to a person might mean B to another person. That's why it's so important not to give when people ask you, what does this mean? It doesn't actually have a meaning of itself in Pictability. What's important is the meaning that the parents attributes to it. And the projective identification mechanism, which is a very basic and strong mechanism, mental and emotional mechanism for human beings, that projective identification really guides participants into the deepest areas of themselves. We have designed images that are fun and colorful, even when it comes to the most difficult situations, children using mobility accessories and medication, because once you bring in the projective identification, then people say, yes, I would like that for my child, and it is going to be positive. I want my child to have an active social life. I want my child to be independent. And so those cards will actually help people get into this the state of mind where they project the things that are important to them, and they can choose them, and they do this in a joyful situation, which is a situation that is defined by flow. Like the children behind me play through a game, the art of learning through games doesn't stop when we become adults. So I come to the Luxembourg Garden here to talk about part of how we planned Pictability, and it's autumn in Paris now, and the Luxembourg Garden was once a palace for the kings, and now a place for all of us to come and enjoy a little bit of nature inside of Paris. We used the theory of projective identification for the Pictability pictures and elements, because when people are able to project from the images deep feelings that they hold for their children and their hopes for their children, then the mechanism that we harness is stronger. And so parents learn better and are able to engage better through the Pictability tool. To start with, the process of prospection is what is defined as visioning a hopeful future for a parent who has a son or a daughter with a disability. And at the conclusion of this visioning activity, people see a future with a positive outcome, with happiness, just like with every other children. And often said that Silvana and I discussed that when our sons were diagnosed, all the fun went out the window and everything became so heavy. And we talked to other parents who talked about the fact that the discussions with professionals sometimes can leave you empty and wondering, just worrying and wondering where to next. It doesn't have to be like this. We're not developing unrealistic hopes for parents. I've never seen in the years that we've worked with parents, people develop unrealistic expectations, but they need to get the permission to dream about their futures, the future for their child, the same as they dream for their other children. And that's what prospection is. And we use Pictability, engage people in prospection with the different vision boards that happen as a result of choosing the cards. Now, choosing the cards is an important way to, in a way, it's a brainstorming, but in another way, when people are engaged in that, they go into something that I sometimes called the sacred space. And what it was is people are really engaged in a concept that was described by Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi as flow. That concept talks about the ease with which we function and the ease with which we plan. And at that time, it seems that time goes by very quickly, and we actually feel a sense of joy. And that's how we should feel about planning for our children. Of course, there is a lot more to read, and there'll be a bibliography list if you want to see more than this quick introduction.